Everyone. Gosh. All right. We're pretty excited to share. As you all know that are here, our registration for Open Farm Days is closed. We have 175 registered farms for this year, which is 15 above our highest number ever. So very exciting to see the program continue to grow and expand. And on that note, for those of you that haven't had a chance to meet Cameo yet, she's recently joined our team just a month ago and will be heading up all of our marketing initiatives. So excited to have you on board, Cameo. And what's always exciting when we bring new people into the fold is we get slightly different perspectives on things. And we just love that new burst of energy and that new insight as well. So we are going to have two marketing meetings, which are always our popular ones. So learning new ways to be able to promote your farms and grow your own businesses. So we'll have this meeting. Next week, we have one with Tony Hazelwood from AGLC, and then we followed up with their second marketing one. So as with most of our programs, if you've got any questions, feel free to put them into the chat. Some of them will answer as we go, and Cameo at the end will go through a Q&A for any questions that you have. Those can be preloaded into the chat, or you can unmute yourself at the end and ask her directly. So welcome to the team, Cameo. We're so thrilled to have you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tanis. And yeah, it's great to be part of the team. It's been a fun couple of weeks, kind of getting familiarized with everything that Open Farm Days has to offer. And yeah, I'm excited to be chatting with all of you about basic marketing and really trying to hammer in some super tangible tips that you guys can take back to your farms and back to your efforts leading up to Open Farm Days. Yeah, get as granular as possible. So she gave me a bit of an introduction, but I'm the new marketing coordinator for Open Farm Days. I own a marketing company. It's called Best Marketing Co. I've had that for a couple of years now, based out of Edmonton, and I went to the University of Alberta. But most importantly, I used to be a farm girl myself. So I do certainly have an affinity for farming. We had more of a hobby farm, but my parents or my mom's family had a big farm out in Brooks, Alberta. And because of that, it gives me I know personally firsthand that I know for a lot of farmers or people that live on that, like that's everyday life. It can seem a little bit mundane. It can seem like it's the norm, but trust me when I say for the general population, farming is so interesting. Animals are so interesting. It is very, very novel. And I just want to drill that home because I think that it can be easy to forget that element and it can make it more difficult to find content. But just know that to the general public, that's massive. I was actually at a very fancy event a couple of weeks ago and they brought goats to it. Like there was like a little bit of a petting zoo element. And this is for like CEOs and C-suite executives, and people are still talking about it. They went crazy for these goats. And that's just a testament to say that, yeah, to keep that in mind as you go forth and do communications. So in terms of just what we're going to cover today, going to start with some just basic marketing principles, just lay a bit of a foundation. We're going to move along to some Open Farm Day specific marketing angles, so different platforms and kind of tactics and how you can engage with our organization for various amplification and support and things like that. Now we're going to get into some tips and resources that, again, will be super tangible at the end that hopefully you can just take those notes, take them with you, and really start building your plan forth with a lot of those. So yeah, I already covered this, but first order business, cannot drill this home enough. I want to keep it at the forefront because even things like animals and crops and equipment, things like that, I think there's a lot of low-hanging fruit on your farms that will really help you when it comes to putting your messaging forward and having those creative content ideas on an ongoing basis to market to your audience. So in this first part, that's a little bit more of the kind of foundational. We won't spend a ton of time here, but I think two principles that are massive for an effective marketing and building it forth is understanding, okay, when you think about your farm or your Open Farm Days event or your organization, whatever it may be, it's important to understand, okay, what is your key value prop? What makes you different? What do you have to offer when you are doing exchanges with customers or visitors? What are those kind of major points that you want to talk about and that differentiates you from other farms? And then even a step further, what do you take a ton of pride in? Is it your customer service? Is it the, environmental elements? Is it production, etc.? Understanding those is like often overlooked, but it is the absolute most foundational component to being able to market yourselves effectively, because you can understand, okay, here's what we have to offer, here's what we're great at, here's what makes us different, special, and then we can go forth and communicate those to our audience. And this is one that it's interesting in marketing in every capacity gets overlooked quite a bit, because really, like, if you can't understand who you're trying to reach and get a grasp as to what they're interested in and where they find value, then it is really challenging to deliver effective marketing at all. Truthfully, you could have the most brilliantly made marketing campaign, but if it was targeted at the wrong audience, it could be all for naught. So I encourage you guys, as you're kind of going through thinking about, okay, here's who we are, here's who we had to offer. Now think that next step. Who are we trying to reach? Is it young families? Is it those interested in, culinary? Is it beer drinkers? Like things like that. Like, who are we looking to reach? Where do they find value? What do they find interesting? And then going from there, that's how you can really craft some strong messages. So really, I like make this diagram all the time, because it's like, okay, what is your key value? What are your audiences looking for in value? What do they value? The intersection between those two things should really create the bulk of what your messaging is, right? What you talk about. If you know that you have, fantastic, whether it's, farm to table culinary offerings, whatever, and you know that your audience is those interested in like local sustainable farming, how can you find out where the intersection is and then go forth from there? So that's just something I like to drill home from a theory perspective. And that's pretty much brings me to the end of the theory part. Like I said, I want to spend as much time talking about hands-on as we can, but I do always like to start with those initial parts, because they are, like I said, overlooked way too often. So in terms of channels, this is just all of them. This is not an exhaustive list, but certainly a lot of the marketing channels and platforms that will be used likely by you in Open Farm Days and by us. I'm going to go through some of their applications and really the best practices. So when we're talking about the marketing mix more formally, today we're going to focus on, okay, your website and your online listings, so things like Google platforms, etc., your social media presence, some traditional media we'll touch on and how you can best leverage that, newsletters if you have them, and then our Open Farm Days channels and how that you can utilize what we're doing and how we can amplify you for maximum impact there. Before we get into those individual channels, something I do want to preface with is that really, especially when we think of digital marketing, the internet, or marketing as a whole, every area or channel that you have a presence on, you're basically painting a picture to the general public, to your consumers, about who you are, right? So consistency across all these channels is really, really key in the sense of branding, look and feel, your messaging, your values, things like that. Remembering that not every visitor visits every single thing. They won't be on your social and your website and seeing your PR. So making sure that each has a thoughtful and, complete presence, that you can be relaying the information that you really have to the visitors that come to each of these areas. And then something that I also really like to harp on is that understanding how these channels interact with each other is really important. And what I mean by that is, let's say you're a big social media farm and you're really you're doing a ton of content, getting a bunch of interaction, etc. Trying to understand, okay, once you get all these people here in this traffic, what do you want them to do? Do you want to make it easy for them to get to your website to book something? Do you want to make it easy for them to get to your Open Farm Days listing and see what you have to offer? Just really understanding how each of these platforms complements each other, how you want traffic to move through them, can also be something to keep in mind. And that can be as simple as making sure the links in your bio on Instagram are completely up to date, making sure that the links in your emails are sending people to the appropriate places. It's not, don't need to overcomplicate it, but something to keep in mind and to do some regular checks on. So starting at the websites, so I imagine most of you have websites at this point, which is fantastic because these are major. I mean, really, this is your business's footprint online. Without a website, you are largely unfindable. I don't know if any of you guys have ever gone to search something and they only had a Facebook page and maybe a Google listing, and you started thinking, does this exist? That's just kind of the digital age and where we're at these days. So websites are major. Fantastic for searchability. So, if I'm looking up farms in my area, having a website greatly increases your chances of being findable there. Great for perceived legitimacy. You'll probably hear me say this a few times. What I mean by perceived legitimacy is that a lot of, especially younger users, we're basing our perceptions about a business based on their online presence. So if you got a website or a great website, we'll automatically be thinking, okay, wow, these guys have something to offer. They're doing a great job, etc. Doesn't necessarily mean it's true, but that is unfortunately how, or fortunately, it is a fact about how a lot of consumers are making decisions and forming opinions on businesses. So I always like to add that in as to why it is important to keep a really thoughtful presence online. And then another huge thing for the website is really just providing that clarity surrounding what you do. And I always like to harp on this point too, because a lot of times you'll read a website and you're, as a consumer, you're like, I don't really understand what this does. And it's usually just due to the fact that as a business owner or farm owner, you know the ins and outs like the back of your hand. But when you're writing your website content, making sure that you're actually presenting this information in a way that's super easy to understand, very comprehensive, that someone that's visiting your site for the first time who has no background would be able to understand it, and then from there make decisions. Is it somewhere they're going to go? Is it something they're going to buy, etc. So in terms of just the best practices for this area, responsive design. So really what this means is just mobile. I think at this point it changes a lot, but I think almost 90% of web traffic is on mobile devices. So, on your phone, and a lot of the time sites function great on a desktop, and then you go to use the mobile version and the links don't work and it's the formatting's all wrong. So whether it's you guys managing your site or whether it is an agency or another manager, just making sure that you're always checking the different like iPhone, Android, laptop, desktop, making sure that it's flowing smoothly on all of those. And then for, consistent branding, just again, pulling through if you've got fonts, colors, logos, making sure that those are up to date. Ideally, the same thing that you're using on all your communications, because it can really just like nail in that strong brand identity and that recognition element. And then clear navigation. This one often can be not as simple as it seems. So really just, again, if you're thinking about your consumer, it's like, okay, what do I want them to do? Do I want them to get to a sales page? Do I want them to take a certain action? Taking a moment to think about that and then making sure that your website, it is easy and intuitive for them to do that. So whether it's your menu bar being very easy, whether it's links, maybe it's a one pager, etc. But at the end of the day, if it's not easy to use, like a lot of traffic will drop off sometimes and not end up making the decision that we want them to make, or the purchase, or whatever that may be. For online listings, is kind of website 2.0. This is mostly for Google. So Google My Business, it is like the holy grail of listings. It is very important to have, and it can include a lot of information: your address, your hours, your website, what you do, photos, etc. And it usually comes up first if someone is to look up your name. So always ensuring that that is up to date. And always ensuring that if there are reviews going on it, that you are responding to them, especially if they're negative or positive. It's just really, Google really values reviews when it comes to search engine optimization. So not only is it important to be, mindful of those and responding to them, also too for the actual, customer relationship standpoint. But if you have any opportunities to encourage people to give you reviews, write a review about their experience, I encourage that as well. Because again, it just really bolsters, it basically signals Google that you're a good business, that customers are happy to have had an experience with you, and then it can start to push you up the rankings. So that's something that I really like to keep top of mind, especially if you have even some people in your, whether it's staff or in your engaged circle, that can start getting reviews going. That's a positive. So social media is huge these days. I think when a lot of people hear digital marketing, they think exclusively social media. That is not the case by any means, but it's certainly a large channel. And I think it's really, really great for Open Farm Days and for you guys, because you have such visual offerings, right? We're talking about farm life. We're talking about beautiful sunsets and animals and things that we can put our hands on. So I think I really do recommend social media, investing in your social media presence to reach a larger audience and to be able to do that storytelling element. So yeah, it is fantastic for all of those things and growing a community too. So I certainly will talk quite at length at the end too about some specific things that you can be doing on your social media to up that game. But really in terms of the best practices, what I like to say is that quality visuals are really important, but they're not, we don't need to have a professional photographer in there. We don't need to have drone footage. I mean, that stuff's very cool if you have the resources to do that. I absolutely encourage that, but iPhone is great, but just do pay attention. Like even things like centering your images, even right on the iPhone itself, doing a little like photo editing with the lighting, the focus, things like that can be massive. At the end of the day, these are very visual platforms. And that is one of the largest attention grabbers. So being a little bit thoughtful with your imagery, taking the extra second, centering that can be huge. Staying engaged on these is fantastic too. So if people are commenting on your stuff, if people are tagging you in things, even if it's as simple as a quick comment respond, if they tag you in something, putting it up on your story, it really just signals to others that you like being engaged with, encourages people to continue to do that, and can contribute to that community piece. That's the thing about social, I think that we forget often, is that it was not initially built out to be this business platform. It was just about that, being social, building community, engaging with one another. So I don't expect you guys, you're very busy. I don't expect you to be monitoring it 24/7. But even if you set a couple reminders 3 times a week, you want to go on, make sure you check in all the comments, seeing if anyone messaged, etc. I think that's a really great practice. When it comes to copy, so anything you're writing on social, keeping it as concise as possible is awesome. Of course, there's going to be times where you need some longer information, but imagine, again, we all have tiny little attention spans these days. So if you can break things into like your first sentence, people know exactly what we're about to talk about, or maybe you pique their interest, it's a bit of a hook, can give your information as concise of a way as possible, and just really be to the point. Again, that interesting piece is massive, because if it's not engaging, people are likely to continue on, and then it's kind of in the void. And then for social, I do encourage consistency, and it doesn't need to be, again, 7 posts a week, but if you can even get active week over week, be putting 1 post out, utilizing stories when you can, because those can be a lot more on the fly. Like say you're doing something on the farm and you pop up a quick photo about what the sunset, whatever it ended up being. That's not only great for the algorithm, signals you have an active account, but it is just great for your engaged community, right? They're staying up to date, builds that loyalty, and onwards. I always use this when I talk about imagery, because and you guys don't have to answer this, but when we look at these 2 things, I'm like, oh man, restaurant B would have the much greater experience, right? Like it's polished, it looks very chic. Restaurant A kind of looks like it was taken with like an iPhone 4. And so I always ask people, like, which one are you choosing? And people always say B, but then the interesting thing is that B is like an Earl's photo. I think it's like maybe a $25 bottle of wine, and A is actually like these $600 beautifully aged thing. But that is what our consumer decision making is boiled down to, is often the quality of the imagery and how things are presented to us. So I always like to use that example in the sense of capturing good imagery can go a really long way, and it can actually like truly influence the perception of who your potential customer may be. Newsletters, I don't know if all of you or if any of you have them, but I like to touch on these because these are a huge asset, because you own this audience completely. What I mean by that is Instagram could shut down tomorrow. Facebook could go away. Twitter is already it's in a decline, but newsletters are something that you own, and you totally own your audience. They're a great marketing tool. So if you do have one already, it's fantastic for, communicating your offers and updates, getting that engaged audience, and having that, established channel to reach them pretty much guaranteed. If you don't have one, I would encourage you, especially if you have any sort of, purchase or service offering where you are collecting information, I'd encourage you to start generating one. And it doesn't need to be something that is, again, weekly. You could even do a quarterly farm update, or maybe only use it when applicable. But there are a lot of great platforms that can enable you to utilize this resource. So if you do end up going forth and running a newsletter, whether it's on MailChimp or any of Klaviyo, there's a bunch. I recommend MailChimp. I just say use a compelling subject line. We've all used our own inboxes. If it doesn't capture you, it's often not opened. Or on the flip side, if it's too spammy, we're also like, that's marketing. I don't really want to necessarily get in there. So just basically looking to pique interest, and just provide valuable content. Suzanne and I were talking about this right before everyone got on, but overusing newsletters, so sending them out constantly without value in them, people tune them out, they'll unsubscribe, etc. But also sending the book of newsletters that is so long and there's so much information, people also won't end up consuming all that. So I usually say no more than kind of 3 major points in an email campaign, but also don't send one out if you don't have something that is important to talk about. And then that bottom piece is just have a clear call to action. So again, what is it that you want them to do? Make sure that is abundantly easy for them to do. So whether it's a massive button, whether it is a subscribe now or a here's the deadline, etc., just making sure that that is top of mind. For traditional media, I won't talk about this as much, but just in terms of this, if you do have any relationships with media outlets or you are being approached by media outlets in your area to cover your farm, this is a fantastic tool. It can really, really widen your audience reach, right? Maybe they don't follow you on social or they've never even come in contact with you, but they are an active news subscriber. So always encourage that. If you are utilizing that storytelling element can be very powerful here. Think, okay, of course you have your facts of your farm, but how can you, is there an interesting story recently? Is there history you can tie in? Is there just any sort of compelling way that you can package this information so that the general public consuming it is interested and considering maybe doing attending your farm for open farm days or taking whatever action that the story is about. And it can be really great for building your legitimacy as well. I think we are still in the era that when you see something on the news or you see something on a billboard, you're like, oh wow, like that's really cool. That's kind of big time. So again, I do encourage those opportunities if you do see them fit. If you are pursuing these, or if you do have people coming to your farm for press releases, etc., I would just say, again, take a minute to think about that audience. What's the message? Who are you trying to reach? And how can you tailor the things you talk about accordingly? I would say that having a strong relationship with your media people is awesome. If you do get someone out onto your farm, taking that extra minute to whether it's touch base with them after or give them a cool experience on the farm, having strong relationships in media can be invaluable for the future, right? When you do have something really interesting, or maybe it's a great cause or an initiative, if you have those contacts and those relationships, it can be much easier to generate press in the future. And then just in terms of messaging, just as clear as possible. They're usually very condensed stories. So making sure that your message is clear, it's appropriate, and then it's just like aligned with your brand values can just be like kind of a 3-point checkbox that I like to look on any sort of outbound media. So then that's kind of those main channels. And now in terms of what we do and how we can all interact together for maximum impact. So really, one of the major assets of utilizing Open Farm Days channels is much wider reach. We can really amplify your messaging and vice versa. And you have the opportunity to connect with, the greater Alberta agriculture community and tap into all of the various, whether it's, ad spends or stories we're getting on. There's quite a bit of additional opportunity there. So that will just bring into the next part that is indeed diving a little bit deeper into, okay, what are those elements? And how can we work together best to make sure that those are being utilized? So just as a general, here is some information. So here's just quickly our Instagram handle, our website, and then our Facebook. Those are our kind of primary channels that we are active on. And I will say, like, we want to amplify farms. That is what we're here to talk about, right? Is the experience and the farms and really getting as personal as we can. But we also, there's 175 farms that are registered this year. So we do need your help to do it effectively and your help to get the ball rolling and often to provide us maybe whether it's pieces of content, interesting storylines, etc. So that it's definitely I'd say if you meet us, you're able to start the ball rolling or take initiative on your end, then it puts us in a great position to latch onto those stories and blast them onto our greater audience. So in terms of just more of the tactical things that you can do within the Open Farm Days platform and community. So a big one is updating your Open Farm Days listing. You will be receiving a newsletter with instructions on how to do that today. And that is, I really encourage you guys to, be really thoughtful about what you're putting on there because it is like often the first contact that people will have with your farm. And it's essentially a little seller, a little one-liner, not one-liner, but one-pager as to why people should choose your farm over the others or why they should, group your farm into their travels and why does it interest them and what do you have to offer. So I'd say write it comprehensively and comprehensively to the point where think of who you're writing to. Imagine that they've never been on a farm before. They don't even know, think sights, smells, sounds, things like that. Really walk it down to that most like basic element so that it can paint a vivid picture for them, because really a lot of farm terminology people don't understand, or they could get lost in the weeds. So keep it basic, but keep it very comprehensive. Kind of walk people through what a day or an experience would look like on your farm for open farm days. What do you have to offer? What are the activities? Do you have kind of some value added ones? Like, do you have a store or wagon rides, whatever it may be, right? Definitely the grammar and the punctuation, the professionalism. I encourage you guys to take extra time and just pay attention to that, because that is, you guys are writing it, it's going straight to the source. There's not as much of our intermediary, so making sure that everything is up to standard there. And yeah, that's pretty much the major elements there. When you do update that too, I'm running the social media channels, so I will be pulling some information from that for our socials as well. So again, just making sure there's as much complete information there, so both myself and both potential visitors know exactly what to expect and what to talk about. And when it comes to anything you guys are doing on social, I highly encourage you to tag Open Farm Days in really anything that's relevant. We're not necessarily scrolling through the timeline all the time, and even if we are, we follow a bunch of people. So for the best bet of you guys getting onto our radar as to content that has to do with Open Farm Days is, yeah, tag us in the stories, in the posts, in the copy if you want to, or if you see something relevant, tag us in the comments. And I just say this because then it really signals us that, hey, there's something here that's related to us, gives us the chance to, whether it's put it on our story, if it's really interesting, maybe I will send you a message and say, hey, like, we'd love to use this, can we feature it on our page, etc. And just, again, gives you more opportunities to be amplified and get in front of that larger audience for us. And again, this last point, feel free to DM us. So say you post and you're like, okay, I really think that this has some value for Open Farm Days. Feel free to message it to us directly and we'll take a look. Again, I will not promise that every single piece of content will be reposted, because there is 175 farms, but the best way to increase the odds of that happening are to just, make us aware of everything that you're putting out there. A big one, and it's kind of almost circling back to my initial thoughts surrounding the novelty of farming to the general public and how genuinely interesting and unique it is. I just encourage, whether it's on your website, whether it's on your media releases, your social, to leverage as much of that storytelling as you can, whether that is history of your farm, whether that is a specific animal, like maybe there's babies born and you're following its lifespan, whatever, things like that. I think that has great power, and again, can really wrap in those visual elements. And the beauty of storytelling too, especially, so let's say the animal example, like there's a baby horse born on the farm and then we want to follow this foal around. That can actually, on a small scale, it provides very interesting content on the day-to-day, but on a larger scale, there's a ton of success stories of organizations that really just got their audience invested in a story, and it built really loyal following or really loyal customers and things like that. So I encourage you guys to just kind of keep an eye out for things like that happening, and to show those to the world via all of your marketing channels. And then for the Open Farm Days element of that, we will be writing a number of blogs, a number of social posts. Of course, we will be talking about Open Farm Days like crazy all the way up until it happens, and then we'll be recapping it after. So again, if you have something very unique that happened on the farm, or a story that you think is very interesting or highlights it, feel free to send it to me. And yeah, again, we'll evaluate that and hope we can get it on the channels in some shape or form. We'll have a number of our blogs and stories are outlined regarding, fiber and alpaca, because that is our theme this year, but there's certainly always room for more content. So just want to extend that invitation again to each and every one of you. And this is pretty much an extension of that. That is the marketing email, and the one that I am active on. So yes, just feel free to be sending things that direction. One thing I will say that is a limitation on my end of running the social and the blogs is imagery, right? Because I'm not out on the farms. I don't have videos of the farms in the day-to-day. So anytime, especially if it's something particularly stunning or visual, I would personally appreciate that being sent along, because it will help with our efforts significantly. And just as a general marketing synopsis, I just like to say that when it comes to marketing, you really do get what you give. Marketing is sometimes it's at the beginning, it feels like you're pushing a boulder and it's not, it's hardly moving, but it is very much one of those momentum-based things. And if you do get thoughtful about the time in which you can contribute to it, in whether it's a day, week, month, or over the year, it can really, really pay dividends, especially as our consumers kind of group ages and the way in which we do research and we make decisions changes to a lot of these digital platforms and social and marketing efforts. So I always just do like to put that out there. And then again, that second point there, we want to amplify. Oh, we absolutely do, but it is on you farms to kind of build that foundation and get that content out so that we can then go forth and work with it. So this last part here is going to be the most tangible, hands-on. These are going to be hard stop tips. Feel free to take photos if you want. This will be posted on YouTube, and there'll be a few different resources attached to these things that I'm going to be sending out in a newsletter either later this week or early next. But it's basically, when it comes to online marketing especially, content is more often than not the biggest hurdle. It is time consuming and it can be sometimes challenging to figure out what you're going to create and all of these different things, especially for busy farmers like yourselves. I can't stress that enough, that we certainly understand that. We know it's not going to be a full-blown marketing operation every day. So I am going to really look to give you guys some ways in which you can hopefully run a very effective presence in less than an hour of real content a month, right? And the way to really unlocking that is to be proactive in your planning. Really, a great plan for marketing can reduce your workload by tenfold. So what I like to do in terms of like a bit of a planning sequence is, and again, like let's say you dedicate 1 hour to getting this started in June, and we go from there. So I usually sit down, I'm like, okay, I established, what do I even need to talk about? So in this context, it's probably, okay, what does our open farm day entail? What information do we need to, what do people need to know about this? Do we have any interesting other things that we want to sell? Is there storytelling? What do we need to tell our audience? Once you get that figured out, and that can be this is all needs can be bullet points. It's just a matter of getting this out, getting these thoughts straight. It's actually, every time I do exercises like this, it almost blows my mind how much I realized I didn't think about or I didn't actually totally have conceptualized. So once you understand what you want to talk about or what you need to talk about, I like to just brainstorm, okay, so how can I talk about these in a way that's interesting and effective? So you just brainstorm a number of things. So say it's like, okay, we really need to hammer home that we have this alpaca or like this fiber operation. So it's like, okay, now we know that. How can we do this? Okay, let's talk about the animals. Let's talk about a day in the life of the farm. Let's, give some facts around, things like that. So you kind of get those creative juices flowing of all the ways in which you can do that. And then really the third step is just, okay, now that we know what we want to talk about and how we want to talk about it, at least loosely, let's just figure out, when do we want to talk about these things and what do we need to talk about? What do we need to have to talk about them? So this usually applies to content. Do we need videos? Is it photos? Do we need a story? Do we need to run a little interview? What are all the things that we need to do? And the beauty of this event is that you can sit down and do this one exercise for the entire summer, really. Anything surrounding open farm days, and kind of get it mapped out in one sitting. So I just always say, when you know what you want to talk about and how you want to talk about it, your content creation becomes so easy. One of the most difficult ways to run, whether it's social media, your newsletter, your website, is to be doing things kind of in the day. It's like, oh, I got to post today. What should I do? Or, oh, we got to talk about this, and not having a plan. I've been there many, many times, and my content's never as good, and the whole plan doesn't come together as well. So that's why I just taking a few hours out of your week and on this end of the summer and getting this mapped out will pay massive dividends in being able to give you a great marketing presence, make your life a lot easier, and also make it that you're not running a full-blown video production there weekly, right? Make it economical for you as well. So this is just an example of a content calendar. I do these oftentimes in an Excel sheet. I do them on a physical, I've printed out calendars before and written it in. It is totally up to you. There's no wrong or right way to do it. But what's important about planning content is, what I normally do is I kind of do these 3 boxes and we get a topic. So again, in this session, you sit down, you're like, okay, so we've got, what day is it? We've got about 2.5 months until open farm days. So let's think about all the things we should talk about until then. So probably going to have a just general teaser post as to what our farm is doing. We should do, some reminders. Maybe it's 1 month out, maybe it's 2 months out, 1 week out, a know before you go, things like that. So you understand, okay, here's what we want to talk about. And then I map them out on a calendar. So I know that, okay, I have basically something to talk about, whether it's every week, maybe it's 2 times a week, etc., all the way up until open farm days. Then I like to write out, okay, what do I need to make this happen? Because that, again, content is one of the larger, often roadblocks to executing on marketing. And the nice thing about this is if you sit down and you map this out, okay, you might only need a total of 15 photos and 10 videos, but now you almost make a checklist. You can really go out and do that in one afternoon on the farm, one Saturday morning, whatever works for you, right? So yeah, and the content needed, these are just examples here, but I just wrote, okay, videos of X, maybe an interview with Farmer Joe, photos of staff. Something that I like to do also if you are out getting content or you have a day where you got your iPhone out, taking a little bit of B-roll, I call it. So that's just videos of basically whatever you're coming across. So maybe it's just as simple, I keep saying sunset, but it's as simple as a sunset in the pasture. Maybe it's as simple as a video of you like petting an animal or something like that. Getting a little bit of B-roll, because then you can, when you're in a pinch and you're like, shoot, I really need to put some content out. I know I got to talk about this. Could be as simple as pulling some B-roll in, putting some text over it about a reminder, and at least then you've got something that you can actually put out and you're not missing those communication goals altogether. So kind of long story short about the content calendar, if you have the opportunity, sitting down, deciding what you want to talk about, when you want to talk about it, and then creating a checklist that you can go out and knock it all out in as effective amount of time as possible could take your content process from like this 15-hour daunting thing to a very short period of time. So I do encourage that. Something that I think is also very valuable, and I suggest all of you do, is pinning a post on Instagram. So what this means, and I don't know if you guys can see it super well here, but on your Instagram accounts, and you can do this on Facebook too, you can pin a post, which means that no matter how much you keep posting, this post will stay at the very top left corner, or if you pin multiple like we have here, also in the middle. And why I suggest that, especially for events-based thing, is that, so say people are being driven to your social media channel, no matter what you've been posting that week, they can immediately find out, okay, they have open farm days coming up. Here's what it's going to look like. Here's what I can expect, and here's why I might go. I view this as a mini website. So telling them everything they need to know in a short period of time, and then letting that, I would honestly encourage, as soon as you know what your Alberta Farm Days, Open Farm Days is going to look like, create a little pinned post. It can be a video, it can be a plain graphic like the one that you can see that we've pinned there, however you want to deliver that. And I just let it pin there. I'll show you how to do that in the next slide, and then let it live there all the way up until open farm days. I think you'd be surprised to how much traffic actually does go to your profile. And if you can really capture their attention, or at least make sure that they consume that key information, it can be massive for awareness and conversion. So how you do this is you make a regular post as you would on any social media platform. This is Instagram specifically. Once it's out there, you go to those top little 3 dots and you just click on them. At the bottom, they'll just be, all these options will pop up and they'll be pinned to your profile. And then it'll just live there. And then when you're done, you go back in, like say August 20th, you go back in, click on the 3 dots, and you just unpin it. And it's as easy as that. But I think that's a great new feature. It only came out in the last year. And I definitely recommend each and every one of you to do that. I keep hounding on this, but storytelling is going to be your best friend, and not only for a engagement perspective, because it's really interesting to your audience, but it'll also make your life easier. Something that I would recommend, both in the scheme of farming and what's very popular right now, if you guys have, I would choose something on the farm and follow it all summer, and this will make your life easier for a number of reasons. You almost create a series, so content for that becomes very easy. You know exactly what the next step is. You're following this along. That could be 1 post a week for the entire summer, is just covering this particular thing you're following along. Again, appeals to that kind of engagement component from the audience. Not to mention can just be really, really interesting to look back on. So when I say choose something, we can talk an animal. It can be a crop, like a very inanimate object. It could be a farmer or a staff themselves. And you can just go through and follow them, whether it's their growth, whether it is their day-to-day, a week in their life, etc. Following them through the summer, I think, is an angle that can be very fun, very informative, and give people a very bird's eye view of what farm life is truly like, and building anticipation up to this event. So something that I will also be sending you in that email is a social media kit. So it's just going to have a number of generic branded assets that you guys I encourage you to use. You're more than welcome, especially if it'll save you some time on the content creation component. So they'll just be, yeah, apply to all. There'll be a bunch in there. Once I have that finished built out, I will send it to you. You can download them all and use them freely. This, if you want to take a picture of it, feel free. These are just some ideas, kind of like that story one I just outlined, that are very hard stop content ideas. So if you want to do a day in the life of your farm, very popular right now. People go crazy about animals. I can't stress that enough. So if you could do a series where you're just introducing your animals. What's their name? What's their breed? When were they born? Etc. Recipes, your farm's history, things like this. And honestly, if you are stumped for content, you're like, I just don't know what to talk about, you can ask ChatGPT, you could do Google, just ask like, hey, I'm looking to make content for my farm. Do you have any suggestions for that? And it'll pump out a bunch of ideas. A lot of them aren't always great, but it'll usually pump out 30. And even if there's 5 in there you can use, or 10, maybe 15, that's fantastic. It just makes your life a little bit easier from that conceptualization standpoint. Just a final thing that's tangible within the Open Farm Day scope. If you can, I encourage you guys to build a dedicated page on your website for Open Farm Days. So think of it, you're going into the Open Farm Days platform, you're creating your listing on our site. I would create something very similar on yours, just so that it's fully comprehensive. If you do have visitors, they can see exactly what it is, and it lives there. It's great for search engine optimization and just for like making sure that all that information is in the same place, as well as if you are garnishing an audience on social and you're pushing them towards your website, when they get there, they also can see what you have to offer for Open Farm Days. If you have the technical abilities, or your website manager, whoever is, to add a pop-up banner, I really encourage that. That just means that anytime someone lands on your site, it'll pop up and it'll say, hey, we're taking part in Alberta Open Farm Days, learn more, and then they could click that and go to the page. So that's just another piece that can really solidify, make sure that that existing traffic you have is also aware that you do have this event coming up. And then I do like to add in, any opportunity you have to collaborate is fantastic, because really what that comes to, especially on digital channels, is often you're able to tap into their entire audience too, right? So that amplification goes crazy there, which is fantastic. And you can ask too, like whether if it's people in your community, neighboring farms, vendors, whoever that is, feel free to just ask, like, hey, we're going to be doing a lot of content surrounding Open Farm Days. We'd love if you could amplify it, or, if you want to be involved in it, we'd love to highlight you. However those conversations look, they're unique to every situation, but they can not only, strengthen your community, which is of course we're after, and can be fantastic for relationships, but can also really, quickly double, triple, 10 times your audience reach and the people that are actually coming across your content. This is the last kind of piece I have, but this is just resources that you can use that can support all these things I just talked about that are 100% free. If you are having to do, if you just realize you need a website, Wix is probably the most user-friendly platform to build out a functional and attractive website. So I do recognize, or I encourage that one a lot. Graphic design, Canva is the easiest, again, access point for people that don't have a graphic design background. And furthermore, there is templates on there. So if you want to grab a template, change it to your colors, that can almost completely negate the design work. You're just then popping in your text and your photos, and can look very, very polished. I'd say choose a template and use it the whole summer and onwards. Photo and video. iPhones are great now. In fact, iPhone content is favored on social media. So feel free to just keep using those. No need for fancy equipment. If you are looking to edit videos, so you want to put together little interviews, CapCut can be very, very easy to do that on. It is free. The Instagram app itself is also good to edit on, and they also have templates in there too, that can just help you, whether it's like big collages or things like that, that can make it really easy. You could just pop in 10 photos, it'll do all the editing, looks beautiful, and you're taken care of. And then if you do need stock images, say it's for a poster, you just want generic farm stuff, you want high quality images, Unsplash, they're free, they're fully licensed. And actually, a lot of the photos on here I took from Unsplash because there's tons of generic farming content. So do keep that in mind if you're in a pinch for content. And then last piece that is important, scheduling. So I understand no one wants to be like posting social media necessarily in live time all the time, especially when you're running a business like yourselves. So Meta Business Suite has a scheduler so you can just go in and say, okay, June 7th, I want this post, and you put the picture in and write your copy. June 10th, I want this. And you can, if you guys are organized, you could actually map out an entire summer's worth of content that will automatically post based on the scheduler. And that one is 100% free. Other ones are not. Things like Hootsuite are quite expensive, but Meta Business Suite is awesome and fully integrated with your Facebook and your Instagram. So yeah, that's the end of that. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, we do have time for Q&A right now. And then of course, that is my email. So feel free to pepper me with them. And I'll see what I can do for you guys. And then again, too, just I'm really excited to see what all of you guys put forth and how Open Farm Days goes for all of you. And I would just love to stay in the loop with all the exciting things happening on. So tagging, sending things to me directly, encourage it all.
Well, thanks, Cameo. There's a lot of information that's in there. So yeah, please feel free to unmute if you've got any questions and you'd like to ask directly. We can certainly take those. And then everyone, I think, hopefully knows how to get a hold of Cameo as well. So yeah, that you can fire those questions off that way. I think what you said is, that authenticity is key and actually recognizing what your farm is about and sharing that story. People don't need anything more than what you're already doing. And I think sort of getting that fact across is really so important. And what was really interesting when we did research for our attendees last year, what they enjoyed most was actually talking to the farmers, understanding what it's like to be out there, just having the fresh air and having those experiences. So really what you do is what they're interested in. But selling it and showing those pictures and letting them see what they get a sneak peek into is so valuable. So wonderful. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, just a bunch of great comments. So thank you, everyone.
Sorry, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay. I'm just wondering, where can I download the Open Farm Days logo and stuff for my social media? And then also, I haven't, am I able to update my profile, my farm profile yet? Sorry, I was just looking and I couldn't find the link or anything to get in there. So
Yeah, so from my understanding, the link will be out this afternoon. So you're not behind the 8 ball on updating that. And then all that will come into your inbox and give you the login and the registration information. As for the logo, I certainly have that. I could put it in the media kit, or Tanis, is there a more instantaneous way for them to access that?
Yeah, well, I think you're sending all that stuff out today. So I mean, I think that's good timing, and I'll have all the downloadable stuff that people can use. So really, we have just finalized all the registration stuff. So right now is this time to start building your marketing. So look for that link. That'll be out today. So you can start doing your website. Look for the stuff from Cameo that will have the stuff that you can download and start to use. So all of that will start to come to you now. So you're in great shape for timing.
awesome. Thank you so much, because I was feeling behind, but now I feel like I'm right on target. So thank you for that.
Yeah,
You're most welcome. Yeah, you are right on. I saw a question in the chat about sponsorship, how and why I've seen other farms do this. Is that in the context of finding kind of local sponsors for your Open Farm Days / giveaways, etc.?
Yes. So
Yeah.
Rick, I can jump in there. I know what you're talking about. So I'll use an example. The Chatsworth Farms has been very successful in going out to the market and saying, hey, we're representing farming in the community. Do you want to come on board? Would you like to, set up a table? Some of the places are big draws for people. So it's sort of a guaranteed number of people past your booths. So Rick, I mean, you put on a pretty successful event, and we know you get sort of upwards of 800 people. So, what we're seeing is people say, come be part of it. And some people sell vendor tables, some people sell kind of sponsorship stuff or ask for in-kind stuff based on what their program is. We're working on another project where the county is actually providing, this group is actually putting together a big collective thing. So they've got lots of farms there. And then the county is providing entertainment and hand wash stations and other stuff. So really it depends on what you're building, how you're building it, and then putting together something that other people can see that value in. So I absolutely think there's a value in looking at some of those community opportunities. Royal Bank, I know, has sponsored some. We work with Service, that's one of our sponsors, but that doesn't mean that our sponsors are sponsors you need to work with. So Royal Bank has been quite active. We've seen TD because they do a lot of stuff with agriculture. So really, it depends on the farms and who some of your partners are and what might make sense for you.
I have a quick question, maybe a technical question. We've had issues on Facebook, if we do links to our website, if we do any like URL forwarding on the link, or we get a 404 error. Like if we have just listed as an abbreviated one, and I'm not sure if we also have it with any bit.ly links. Do you know if that's something that's like a common occurrence? Like we like to have it shortened just to go nice and short, and then go to a longer URL that has to do specifically with the Open Farm Days event.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything or encountered myself anything specific to Facebook and kind of like link forwarding. I would suspect, without knowing the full details of that, that it might be in the, whether it's the link shortener you're using, etc. But I think a lot of the time for Facebook too, if you do want to keep that, they change their format all the time. That's the funny thing about Facebook. It just changing. It's so annoying. But a lot of the time, what they'll do is if you put the link in, it'll actually populate the large photo and clickable link, and then you can delete the link from there, and then that will be, so then you don't have to deal with a big ugly URL. So that can be an option. But yeah, sorry, outside of that, I haven't heard of any formal like link breaking happening on Facebook.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, it does seem to change all the time.
Yeah. Oh, it's brutal back there. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I think if that's it, thank you, everyone. So watch your inboxes. Now is the time to start getting your information in for your, for your plans. And our next meeting will be AGLC next week. If anyone has questions and wants to get in touch with any of us, please reach out. We're happy to talk about kind of building your programs. We're happy to talk about any permitting and stuff that you may need. So whatever it is that you need, reach out to us directly, and we can help you with your planning, and look forward to seeing everybody again next week. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Have a great rest of your week.